Hello and welcome to this third episode of the Frequency Shift podcast. Today I interview Matt Omo, who shares with us his journey with sound and sound healing. And it's a beautiful story where he links in the creativity and healing and expression and voice and why sound and what sound really is such a significant part in our realization and remembrance of our divine sacred beauty as divine beings that we are. So, enjoy. Okay, so welcome to the third episode of the Frequency Shift podcast. I'm Greer and I have here Matt Omo. Matt,
Yes.
hello.
Hello. How are
Welcome.
you?
You've got quite a backup. Do you want to share where you're sitting and what's that behind you?
Oh, that's my big gong. So that's the instrument that I mainly use. Well, amongst other ones. I'm just sitting in my teepee at the moment. So I've just set up I've got a bit of space in the backyard here. So just set up the teepee where I do regular sound sessions. So got my dig set up there, got my crystal bowls there, and yeah, just usually um, come back here, and I've got a whole community on Facebook that we do regular sessions with, and it's just nice to get out into nature and to do the sound. So that's where I'm sitting,
Mm-hmm.
as opposed to sitting in an office somewhere, because I did that long enough, and that's
Mm.
doesn't work for me. So
Yeah, yeah.
teepees and trees and rocks and things and
Awesome.
oceans and
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. I'm finding that nature is quite addictive, and the more I reconnect, the more I want to get out there and yeah, less away from society and that 9 to 5 lifestyle. So absolutely. So
Mm.
Matt, I'll just share with whoever's listening at the moment, the viewer, that Aaron and I came across you. I think it was last month. We were in Melbourne for a mastermind, and you came and graced us with your powerful work. It really was.
Graced you. I graced you, didn't I?
Yeah, it was a gracing. A gracing went down.
Grace is not a word that most people refer to me as graceful, but that's cool.
Yeah, well, I felt like for me there was just such deep gratitude and it was otherworldly or otherworldly. So I associate the grace with that and
Cool.
humility, your
Take it.
humility and your genuine expression of your work. It really was powerful for both of us, and we've since told quite a lot of people about your work. So it's
Oh,
so great
thank you.
here. And as I was just saying, I feel like a lot of the people who are being drawn to this will also be drawn to your work. So do you want to share a little bit about what it is that you do and how you came into it?
Um, yeah. Do we got a few days here?
Yeah.
Um, it's it's funny because every time somebody asks me that, then the story just kind of changes, because there's so many different avenues and turns and twists that kind of brought me to this place that I am now, as all of our lives do, I think. And I just like, one thing that I've kind of picked up over the last couple of years is I like to, you mentioned, my work and what is it that you do, and it's to me it's I call it the work, and it's what comes through, because um I've struggled over time with human challenges, as we all do, and when I say it's my work and this is what I do, and then all of my stuff gets layered on top of that, and I kind of get in the way. I tend to get in the way. So for me, it's like, it's really clear when I say the work, and this is what's coming through. So just a
Nice.
little tweak on the way that I phrase things, and I think it's important, because that's kind of where I come from with the work, is that I've been on my journey, and what my journey entailed was to kind of bring more awareness to who I am, and to connect myself to that larger part of who I am, and that's what I want to bring forward to people. And when I'm sharing the work, is to help them embrace the fullness of who they are, and so to answer your question, that is a kind of a real roundabout way to get
Good,
to
that's how
your
I answer questions too.
is that, well, let's see, we could start way back to well, I grew up in the States, and it's like, I was in a small town in Indiana, like middle America. And so, like, a lot of this spiritual stuff was more focused in through like a religion. I was raised Catholic. And so there was a lot of you know, stuff that I was holding and like confines that I felt that I was in that didn't really complement who I truly was. And so it took me a long time to go on this journey of self-discovery, so to speak. And I did that through, first of all, getting the hell out of Middle America. Um, that was my journey. I went to Los Angeles of all places, and that's where I really got introduced to a creative part of myself. And um, I ended up finding myself in the acting world, as many people do over there. Um, Not that I did anything worthwhile in that industry, but what it did was I went to this classroom, and the reason that I share this with you is because this is one of the main pivotal points that well, there was one before it, but I'll get to that in a second. Is that I went to this classroom and it was for an acting class, and I thought, oh yeah, I'm going to be an actor and I want to, make an impact in the world, blah blah blah. And this acting teacher was going through his stuff, and he said, there's one thing I teach in this acting class. It's a practical guide to this book. And he lifts up the 7 Spiritual Laws of Success by Deepak Chopra. And I happen to have that book in my bag at that moment. And I was like, I must be in the right place. And I ended up spending 4 years with this guy. Daryl Hickman was his name, and is his name. And he was not, I was under the guise that I was going to learn acting. And what I actually learned from that was how to work with energy, because we did how to work with energy and how to open to my authentic self. Those are the two main things that came out of those 4 years working with on a regular basis with Daryl. And that was in that we're writing scenes, we were writing monologues about stuff that was going on for us personally, and then sharing that. And that was always his mantra, is like, you can only share from where you are in yourself and what your message is, and you've got to be authentic with yourself, and then express that through the writing, through the acting, or whatever is there. And so I learned that. And I also learned we did exercise work as half of the class. So it was a 3-hour class, and half of the class we'd stand in a room and we'd do different practices with each other to feel each other's emotions, to start to be present with each other, to be present in ourselves, to allow things to move through our body, through our voice. And all that stuff started to open up this awareness in me of that, I have this capacity to work with people, and we're all connected basically. And it just kind of just really sparked a lot of creativity within me that then opened me into healing. I think healing and creativity are very interrelated. And that's kind of, I guess, what you'll see is, like, as this journey for myself has developed, is that um being in that realm of acting and music and all this stuff, and exposed to all these different creative um humans over there in LA. You get all kinds there. It opened my mind to many different possibilities and inspirations. And so yeah, I just started exploring, just started playing. And in amongst that, back to that first monologue that I wrote in that class, it was about my mom. And so this was the pivotal point that I spoke about before, that actually happened before this acting class kind of came in to teach me.
Mm.
And that was that my mom, she died at a young age. I was 22, and she died suddenly. There's still lots of questions around the actual death, but anyway, it's not about that. It's about that in that moment, it woke me up, and I was just in college, just being a silly kid and just hiding basically. um, I was, getting into all the things that we do as kids, right? Drugs, alcohol, sex, just numbing myself. That was my numbing time, right? And so that the death of my mom just kind of sparked this. Oh shit! Like, I've actually got to grow up now. I've actually got to do something with my life, and that was the catalyst that then opened me more into exploring what is it, who am I, what am I going to do. And that led me to LA, and that led me to the acting class. And then, like I said, I wrote a monologue, and then it really opened up the healing in that respect. And I started to understand how expressing and the voice and all that is interrelated. And amongst all that, I'm doing massage classes. So I'm doing a computer job at this point.
Wow.
I have a computer engineering degree. And then all that opened into more about I can't be in a cube. Remember, I said I got to be out here in nature and whatnot. And so I was in the Santa Monica Mountains, and at lunchtimes I would take my guitar and just try and find some sort of balance from being contained in a little cubicle programming on a computer for 10 hours a day. And and that led me to to do healing work, to do massage work, to realize that during the massages I was actually feeling other people's emotions before they were. And then within that, I started to explore that. They became more like counseling sessions. So I got a master's degree in spiritual psychology. And then I started to explore all kinds of energy work. And next thing I know, I'm in the jungles of Peru and working with medicines and hanging out with shaman. And, um, you know, I've kind of looked at every culture, every tradition that I can. There's a few more that I'd like to explore. But yeah, and it's just opened up this, the main thing to get it into this form that I'm in now, working with sound and vibration, coming from the creativity, from the expression, from the massage work, from the energy work, from the psychology background. All that stuff merged for me when I was in the jungle and working with the medicines. And we're sitting in this little shack, right? And there's no electricity, there's only candlelight. We're working with the shaman who has just like just a bundle of leaves, and he's just shaking them and doing his iqueros, and singing the medicine, singing into the plants and um, the environment and whatnot. And then he just took a break, and he kind of just stopped. And you would think that there'd be silence in that state then. And what happened was I just heard this incredible music, and I thought, oh, that's a great track. I got to get that from him when I'm finished with this. And then I thought, shit, he doesn't have a freaking iPhone or a radio, or like, there's no music playing here. What are you talking about, dude? And then it just clicked. And it was in that moment, it was like, that's the sound of the jungle. That's the sound of the spirit of the jungle that's coming through. And I could hear it as if it was music. And I was like, oh, this is what it actually feels like to experience. Everything is sound, everything is vibration. That's what the ancients and mystics have talked about for thousands of years, right? And
Mm.
so in that moment, I was like, it was like a visceral thing. Like, my cells just knew this landscape. And I came out of that ceremony, and I had my little bowl with me, a Tibetan bowl, and I started playing that, and these tones started coming out that opened into all sorts of weird and wild and wacky stuff. And so that's where I went, boom, and just explored that. And yeah, so there's a longish version of how I've gotten to where I am in my
Yeah.
story. So,
And how long
yep.
ago was that experience in Peru?
Peru would have been about 9 years ago, probably.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so now you're based in Sydney, but you travel a bit?
Yeah, based in Sydney, and I do get up and down the coast at the moment, and then working on getting outside of the country. There's things in work for that.
Right.
So like you.
And so why do you think it's so important that those who are, or is it important that those on their path and who are awakening into that fullness of who they are, why is sound such a crucial part of that, do you believe? And do you believe that it is crucial that almost, that everyone kind of has some kind of experience of this?
Well, yeah. See, the thing about sound is that we're we're kind of from a Western culture, we're pretty naive as to what sound actually is. In that, we tend to relate sound first of all as entertainment, right? We're gonna go see a music concert or something, or we're gonna see a singer or a band play, or and it's very, you know it's about entertainment. It's not really framed in the way that most cultures around the world, more of the indigenous cultures, hold it. I mean, pretty much every indigenous culture, you will find that sound is sacred into their rituals, into their ceremonies, into their entire culture. And you kind of start to explore the different stories of creation, and within each religion, culture, tradition, that you can trail back, and you'll find a story about, just like it's written in the Bible, like, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was God. And it's like, that's one one religion's interpretation of a creation story. And then you've got the gong, which the the story of the gong is that holds the vibration of creation within it. The gong was sounded, and that rippled out to create the universe. And then you've got the didgeridoo, and the drums have been used in ancient ceremonies for millennia. And it's like, all these instruments, all these sounds are starting to talk to and embrace this idea that sound is sacred, and that in fact creation is actually sound. um, and so you start to look at that, and you start to then understand that. And like I was referring to in the jungle, where I actually had a tangible experience of feeling that all of that world and that creation was actually sound around me,
Mm,
then it's like you start to then expand your view from sound being 20 to 20,000 hertz that we're hearing with our ears, that is entertainment value or a communication. And you start to realize what quantum physics is now embracing. This is the beauty of science at this point, is that it's come full circle back to what the ancients have been telling us for thousands of years, and we were just too busy conquering the world to listen. And
mm,
so now we're coming to a place where we've burned ourselves out, and it's time to listen again. And so we have the science to actually um, allow our minds to hear. And what they're saying is that everything is vibration. Quantum physics is saying the physical body is actually vibration. It's not solid. And the really freaky thing about that too is that, it's being that it's mostly vibration. Even when it's in that vibratory state, that particle that's vibrating, that quantum particle that's vibrating, it flashes in and out of existence 8 times per second. So it's like, for imagine that, how fast that is. And like, in each second 8 times, it's not here, you're not here, so every cell of your body's flashing in and out. So it's a
wow,
really
I
trippy
hadn't
thing to
heard
think.
that. That's
Yeah,
amazing.
yeah. And so this, they're looking into, well, where does it go when it's not here? Where does it go? And like, this is really blows your mind. But the ancient cultures and mystics know where it goes, because it's all written, and it's all in the philosophies and their practices about going into that source and going into that um, you know the interconnectedness of all things. And so, coming back to your question, is that sound to me, and that does it, people need to experience it, is, well, we're all experiencing it, because we're all vibration, and vibration is sound. So all of creation is vibration, and vibration is sound. So all of creation is actually sound. And
Mm,
so start to explore that, start to let go of those bounds that we have from our ears. I mean, even just thinking on a physical level, is that there's animals that are hearing much more and expressing much more frequencies than we're capable of.
yeah.
So already there's more to it than just that. And then you go into infrasound and ultrasound, which those animals do actually communicate and work with, like the dolphins, the whales, the elephants, the giraffes, these types of things. And then you see um, that our instruments only have such a range that they can interpret vibration. And then what quantum physics is starting to say is, okay, now our emotions are actually measurable vibrations, and our thoughts are actually measurable vibrations. And so what I see is that then you take those two together, you get your intention, right? I call it the vibrational signature, because basically what's happening is your thoughts and your feelings are vibrations that are transmitted around you into the world, creating an atmosphere, a vibrational atmosphere that you actually sit in, and that becomes the world that you experience. And so it's a funny question to then answer from that space, is, do all of us need to experience sound in our journeys, in our evolution? It's like, well, we actually are sound. And I always say, it's like we are the vibrational manifestation of our soul, these fine divine vibrations that are inspiring thought within us, that have the larger consciousness that's come through into this form, this physical reality that we're in, is is actually the catalyst to becoming this. So it's like those vibrations, see, every vibration is also the creator of vibration. And so just looking at the voice, like as I'm talking, these vocal cords are pushing up against the molecules in the air, stimulating that speaker that's then picking up the voice. It's like, so that vibration created more vibration and more vibration and more vibration, just like that divine source coming from a still point. At the beginning, there was just a still point and no movement. And then all of a sudden there was a subtle movement. And that was the first vibration, right? Or the word. In the beginning was the word, right?
Mm,
And so, or the Big Bang Theory even talks about this too. So science even holds on to this concept, is that, the first initial subtle movement. And in that movement, then that's the first vibration, which by its nature creates more vibration, which then ripples into this larger consciousness that expands out, that then comes down to denser and denser vibrations, which will be inspiration, thought, emotion, physical form, right? And so it's like we are all working with these vibrations, and we are, in fact, we are like I said, the vibrational manifestation of our soul. And what I mean by that is that we're literally our soul's song. Okay, the song of our soul has sung itself into this form, right? Just by the nature of it. That's so cool, isn't it? And so it's like we're working with vibration. We're all doing it, and so that's really like, when I talk about empowering, it's like, well, in that vibration, in that model is an interconnectedness, right? Because that initial, we all came from that initial still point, and then it started as a subtle movement, and then all other movements, which is us, every cell in our body is in vibration, is a result of that initial movement. So we all come from that same point, right? And so within that is this, if you can just imagine that, like, it's almost like there's this eternal song that's being sung through the universes, through the cosmos, right? And within that there's a divine harmony. There's, you know, and
Yeah,
so
I
like,
just had the word harmony coming through so strongly. Yeah, yeah.
that's it, and it's like, and so to me it's like that's a huge metaphor to hold on to allow not only humanity to come together. If we start to this, if we start to detach from this idea of, from our identity of the typical identity that we tend to hold on to, which is our body, our culture, our tradition, our religion, our, whatever, our mind, our emotions. Like, these are common things that we link to as, this is who I am. And we start to identify then, so we detach from that and identify then with the actual essence of ourselves, which is this divine vibration that's interconnected to all things, and each part of it is critical for the harmony of all of it. And we sit in that space as that identity, and then it's like, you kind of move through life differently. You kind of like say, well, that person over there is not really the evil doer. It's, that person over there is actually a divine vibration that's emanating in a different frequency, that's complementing the harmony of all of us. And it's like, how, and it really comes, it lends itself to a place of being more accepting, more understanding, more loving for each other. And then as that expands into all of creation, really all of life on earth and beyond. So that's really what speaks to my heart.
And I want to thank you, because I would have a thought and then you come and speak to that, and then I have another thought. So there's obviously some harmony going on there. So thank you for that. And two things I want to touch on. One is that yesterday I was on your post, and yesterday was Harmony Day, and that idea, you wrote a really personal post about the collective and the interconnectedness and forgiveness essentially, and that concept of I for an I, not really being aligned with that higher interconnectedness. And the second thing was, which I'll just raise now and can come back to, was that idea of, when there is disharmony, and that sometimes people do come into our lives that we're not in harmony with, perhaps, and that perhaps we're at a different frequency, and there is that mismatch, there is that clash. And it's the clash of sound, which perhaps manifests in the clash of like interests or just values or that sort of thing. So how can we use this paradigm to assist us in our daily life with conflict? And even with my had two young children, and this morning I was just like, had a couple of moments where I was breathing very, very deeply, and I went to the bathroom like, thank God they're in school care. But,
You just gotta chuck them out the window occasionally and just throw them to the wolves. Yeah, they're challenging, aren't they? Yeah, so
you're applying this, because this is what I'm really passionate about. Gabby, giving these beautiful concepts that I know, times where it's peace and I'm in my teepee or I'm at my forest, but then there's the reality of
that's it. Well, the ironic thing is, this teepee's in the backyard of the middle of Sydney. It's like,
nice.
So I do have a national park bordering over here.
Yeah.
But you go, 5K that way, and you're in the thick of it. So it's like, yeah, it's that paradigm, and it's realizing that, when you were talking and you like say there's this going on, and then something else or someone else comes in, and it's like maybe a jarring different clash of frequencies. And it's first of all, it's like always taking it back to the metaphor of sound, of music. And it's like, um, you know, the idea that two notes don't go together doesn't really exist. There's just different flavors of sounds, of chords that will be created by the different notes. And they might, you know, to a trained musician, some of the frequencies together might sound like not music. They don't have the musicality, but that's a mental construct, isn't it? Of those not going together, right? And so, um, in essence, the idea of this negative, positive, right and wrong, good and bad is all a mental construct, because where we come from is that initial still point, right? And there's that wholeness, that unity, that oneness, that there is no duality in that realm. And so, not that that's to discredit all of the challenges and the things that we're experiencing here in this dualistic world that we live in, because that's a very critical part of why we're here, right? Is that we're wanting to elicit these opportunities for growth and wanting to be in these places that feel like a clash. But in the essence of it, there's really not a clash. There's just different vibrations, and starting to look at how to work with those. And then the thing that I would also point out, as you were talking, you did a kind of thing like this, right? There's this one, and then there's this one, right? And they may clash, right? And well, where is the clash actually happening? Is the question. And the clash is actually happening within yourself. Okay. So, because remember, I said, like, we have this vibrational signature from our thoughts, our feelings, and which actually then becomes the physicality, the biochemistry of what we are actually sitting in our bodies, that vessel. And that transmits vibrations, and we take action from that space. And so, in that, we're creating this vibrational atmosphere of reality, our perception around us, right? And I look at that as a bubble, right? Because it's really cool to think of it as a bubble, because you're actually always looking through your perception. You can never see outside of yourself, right? And so that vibrational bubble consists of all the thoughts, the fears, the insecurities, the hopes, the dreams, the experiences, all the stuff that your consciousness holds, right? And so when I look through that, imagine looking from inside the middle of a soap bubble, let's say, right? And if you look, it's clear, you can see through it. But as you look through it, it's a concave curvature that's going to skew the view, so to speak, because you're basically looking through a lens. And so I call the lens that we look through, our lens of perception, our sound lens, right? Because it's consisting of all the vibrations that we're holding, and we have to look through the lens of those vibrations, of that sound. And so as we look through, that's how we see other people. We see them colored with those sounds, those frequencies, those perceptions, right? And so when we say, oh, that person is doing this, that's causing this reaction in me, and we clash because of that, well, you're only clashing with your perception of that person, and vice versa. And so in essence, the way to look at that is, okay, well, where's the disharmony within myself? Where am I? And I always look at it like this, is that we're either allowing that flow of harmony, that divine vibration, to move through us, or we're resisting it. It's that simple. I've done all these different modalities and practices, and what I find is some of them get really in depth and really analytical. And my journey coming from computer engineering into this more creative work has been about getting out of the head and dropping into the heart you
Mm.
know and so it doesn't appeal to me to go into the all the little intricacies of what each chakra represents, or what my bazillion past lives incur, and all this stuff. It's like, well, I'm here now, I'm holding these vibrations, and what I have command over in my life is my breath, my body, my voice. Well, the voice comes out of the breath. My breath, my body, my mind, and my emotions.
Yeah.
Those four things are the things that I have command over. And those four things are actually creating the reality around me and the people around me, because people are doing and saying whatever it is that they want to do and how they want to be. And how I perceive them is within my command. So if I let go of that and say, oh, this person is a different vibration and doesn't resonate with me, and they need to change their vibration, or they need to get out of my life, then my state of being is dependent on them or that experience, and I'm disempowered.
Mm-hmm.
And so for me, the whole idea is, how do we become more empowered within ourselves, more whole within ourselves, and aligned with that divine essence that's wanting to sing through us.
Mm.
So I don't know if I answered your question in there.
Well, you raise more questions, I guess, but
Okay.
which is good. That's a good answer.
I kind of forgot what. Yeah, it was just the clash thing. Was what was
Well,
behind it.
yeah, and so that's, yeah, some of what you said I've, heard and experienced, and I guess known to some extent before. And another one of kind of how I live also is trusting on that feeling body and trusting on that what I'm being drawn towards,
Yeah.
and um, and perhaps it's about what is my natural flow moving me to, rather than where I come up with resistance is when I feel like I'm stuck, or I'm like holding on to, I'm attached to something rather than
Mm.
trusting that natural flow. And
Yeah.
yesterday I had a day where I wasn't in a bad mood. I just wasn't. I had the whole day to myself, so I thought, right, I'm going to write some posts and I'm going to, do these things. And I sat down a few times to type, and I wasn't in flow. And I was saying to Aaron, last night, that I really have seen that, that natural rhythm of life goes like this. And I know this intellectually. And
Yeah.
yet I also hold myself to really high standards, and I kind of want myself to be up here a lot of the time. And that really, when I am in one of those lower natural flows, that the resistance really is what creates that drop even further, rather than simply allowing them. And so, again, I know this intellectually. I do have times where I really embody it, and then I get caught, every now and then too on it. So what you were saying reminds me of that.
Yeah. That's it. You just gotta accept what is and then move from there. It's
Mm, mm.
yeah. We fight it. Complicate it.
Yeah. So my attention's just been drawn to the gong behind you.
What gong? What are you talking about?
Didn't you know there's a giant gong behind you? And excuse me, I moved before because my battery was getting low, so I need to plug in. Would
Mm.
you, and I'll use the G word again, um, would you grace us with um, the
That
sound
G
of
word.
the sound of the gong, the sound of the universe, just so that people
The
can.
sound of the universe, yes,
Yeah,
coming from the backyard of
that's right.
Sydney.
Yeah. And
Well,
again, I because
it's a little crooked. Oh, there's nothing worse than a crooked gong, let me
there
tell you.
is nothing worse. In fact, I honestly cannot
There we
think
go.
of anything worse.
I can't believe we did that whole first part of the segment with a crooked
We'll just
gong.
stop the recording and we'll start again.
Okay. That's it. Yeah. So you want some grace coming out of this little
Yeah, just so
piece
that
of
people
metal here.
can, because again, a lot of what you've said, it's like the mental mind, we can kind of get some of it, but again, it's to be experienced and to be felt.
That's it. It's yeah. there's there's so many things that come out of the sound, and like what on a physical level, mental level, emotional level, it's phenomenal, the what's going on with your brain. Like, um listening to music is the second most active thing that your brain can do. The
Yeah.
first most active thing is to play music. So basically, if you're playing music, there's nothing else in your life that you can do that's going to stimulate more parts of your brain than that activity. Second to that is listening to music. Isn't that cool? Because I used to think that it was just one aspect of the brain that works with sound, right? And they've done, now that they can do the brain scans and actually see the brain in action, it's like, no, that's pretty much wrong. So yeah, the brain is getting lit up like a Christmas tree when it's listening to music. Um, so that's really cool, and it's working from all the, like, the most ancient part of the brain, to the frontal lobe, the most current, the newest, most developed part of the brain. And so you know it's interesting that it does that, because like, these rhythms and the drums and the gong and these instruments have been used for millennia, right? And so it's somewhere in our DNA, is like this connection to sound through the different traditions and cultures that we come from, and all of humanity. Yeah, so it's quite cool.
And something that, in modern Western society, a lot of our music, the tone of it is such a different frequency than this kind of more traditional sounds, the bass sounds of.
Mm.
So it's almost a distraction from the
Oh, a lot of it, yeah, a lot of it's not. Well, see, the thing that the thing about more modern music is the lyrical aspect of it that I think is more distracting. And I don't typically use lyrics or with the voice. It's more tones, more vibration. It's not typical mantras or chanting because I don't want to put any dogma on it. I don't want to put any suggestion into where it goes, and that we're engaging the mind when we start to work with that language center. And it's like, let's just leave the language out. And another thing about, you mentioned the lower tones and stuff, is like they're now discovering, like the Tibetan monks, and they do those real throat toning and stuff, really low. Yeah, that that
but they sound a bit better.
yeah, that was pretty close. So you did a good.
Thank you.
Yeah, you've been practicing, haven't you?
I have.
Yeah, I do it, but I would sound silly too. It just comes through sometimes. But the reason I mention that is because the those low tones they're finding are actually stimulating the nervous system in a way that it drops you right into parasympathetic. So the relaxed rest and restore state, and that's where most healing happens, and that's a really good thing to mention about the modern world, is because we're all in adrenal fatigue, we're all overstimulated, popping our caffeine and our coffees and whatnot, and it's we're depleted, and we're on fight or flight all the time because of all the stresses that we put in. And so with those low tones and listening to that music, it just flips you right back into that rest and restore. And you'll find sometimes, like, people will come into the workshops and they'll do do the work, and they'll be chanting the sacred mantra, they'll so they just like drop right into a deep sleep, so which is really cool, because
Yeah, and
that's
what you were saying then reminds me even of in labour. Like when I was in childbirth with both of my
oh,
babies, I really my body, without any conscious choice, I started eliciting these deep. I sound like a whale or something. There's a
oh nice. So
going.
self-soothing in a way, hey?
Yeah, but just there was again. It obviously taps into this part of us that knows that is the sound of birth. There are a few owls in there as well, but it was largely, it was this, and I remember at the time, this is totally such out, but the midwives had said that is that when we can get into that, the more we come into the high pitch, the tightening, the more the body tightens, and the tougher the.
Yeah, cool.
And it was their sounds was, I have not since made that sound. It was
Yeah,
unique experience both times.
that's cool. Yeah, nice one.
Anyway.
All right, so you want some gong?
Yes, please.
All right.
Thank you. I suspect what's happening with the recording, some of that sound was softened and then some of it we could hear. But what was interesting about that as I was watching you is I could see the sound in you
Yeah, right.
because you became the sound.
Mm,
So
fascinating.
I heard bits, but it was, yeah.
Was it broken? I don't know if it's gonna. I've got this mic on my head thing,
Yeah.
so it might have clipped it.
Yeah, in any
Um,
case, I'll put a link to one of your YouTube pieces below this so that people can click on it. And I know that I'm going to get one of your because you do the 30-minute soul is it?
so soul vibing, yeah. So the process that the foundational process that I work with is called soul vibing. So
Yeah,
yeah,
so
30.
after the call, I was actually going to ask you about it. So perhaps we can, yeah, if I can just ask you to share that, because I think that my sense is that's kind of your signature, um, some of your signature work. And then I've got
Mm.
one other question to ask.
So what did you ask me?
Just if you want to explain the soul, or just how do you describe that?
The process is so soul vibing process is so I integrate breath work and sound um, medicine into a format where we we work with getting the mind out of the way so that we can then expand into that vibrational part of ourselves. And so the idea is that we connect with the um, well, we actually resonate with the vibration of our soul. So that's why I called it soul vibing, because I want to take people to that place where they resonate with the vibration of their soul.
Mm,
The way we do it is through a segment of active breathing, layering in the sounds. So there's clearing sounds at the beginning to start to open and move people out of that place of activity in the mind. we change the biochemistry with the breathing. We allow different hormones to be released to actually take you to an altered state. And then in that altered state, then you have that capacity to actually experience sound at a deeper level.
mm,
It's one thing to come in and lay down to a sound healing experience, and there's great benefit in there. Obviously, with the sound is healing, and and then a lot of times in that, because we're so stimulated in our lives, it takes a good portion of that to just relax into ourselves. And so that's why I give people, we do a bit of toning, we do a bit of breathing, and that with that we're actually giving the mind something to chew on, and then we're actually allowing us to actively participate into the journey,
mm,
so that we are just basically turning the volume down on all the noise that's going on, that's actually the resistance to allowing us to hear that soul vibration.
mm.
And so actively participating into it, I tend to do it in group settings. It's just how it's evolved. It's interesting. I enjoy it that way, I guess. But yeah, and I also do it in private settings. So it's either one-on-one, or we get a group of 20, 30 people or more just lying down. And we do the breathing together, toning together, go into this altered state, and then I just let the sounds carry us. And so what I'm doing is tuning into, just as we listen to each other's voices, we with practice we can open into the other vibrational interpreters, our senses.
Mm,
I call them vibrational interpreters because we're hearing with vibration, that's proven. We're seeing with vibration, that's also proven. The vibrations of the eyes of light is 40 times greater than the vibrations of the ears.
mm,
And there's some science that's coming through that's starting to understand that perhaps we're not really tasting and smelling in the particles that we actually initially thought, but we're actually picking up vibration. And so we're smelling in vibration, and we're tasting in vibration. And so with that, and I would say that there's probably going to be um, science that will evolve into actually the touch that we feel, we're actually feeling vibrationally.
yeah.
And I think that all those are vibrationally interpreting, because everything is vibration, obviously, right? And so it's just the science needs to catch up. And so internally there's a mirroring. Well, I guess it starts internally and then goes externally, is that we have our inner senses. So the external senses are just a reflection of the inner senses that we hold, our clairsentience, clairaudience, clairvoyance, the all the internal stuff. So being able to hear more on a spiritual level, being able to see more on a spiritual vibrational level, being able to taste, smell, and touch on those levels as well. And so with practice you can start to do that. You can start to actually listen. And so I'm listening from all those ranges, because over time I was coming back from massage work that I did. I was doing 20 to 30 massages a week,
Mm,
and in a day spa in LA. And I started to as I was touching the body in close proximity to these different bodies, I was actually picking up what they were feeling and what they were, some of the thoughts and this and that. And so I was developing, I was, by default, I was developing that capacity to actually utilize those inner senses that we typically don't utilize in our lives. And so now it comes in handy in that this work. I tune into the room or to the individual client, feel, listen to what their thoughts, their vibrational thoughts are, what their vibrational emotions are, what their physical vibrations are, and just tune into that. And in the tuning into that and listening, then you can allow different sounds to come through your voice, to come through the instruments that are aligned with that, with an intentional basis to open those, to stimulate parts that are a little bit depleted, to relax parts that are overstimulated, to, and start to work in different realms in that round ranges, I would say, in that thought has a certain range, just as our ear has a certain range, our emotions have a certain range, our each chakra has a certain range, then blah 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 onto the other etheric realms. And so, God, this is a long answer. Basically, what I'm doing is just tuning into people and then allowing the sounds to move through. And so we're doing this like we're singing together, is what it is. It comes down to breathing together, singing together is what it is on many different levels, and that helps people to open into themselves and gain awareness of where there's resistance, so they can allow more flow. That's it.
Beautiful. And I know certainly from being participating in the group session that Aaron and I went to, that it was very much multiple levels, lots going on all at once. I loved it. It was very physical,
Yeah.
emotional. My whole thing was like, wee. So yeah.
Didn't you say you're like in the womb of creation or something? Or
Yeah, I did. Yeah, I had a moment where I was being held by the womb of, like, it was incredible. I
that's
was like I was
awesome.
being held in creation's vagina. Like that's how
That's it. Yeah.
that's how I felt. I felt like nestled in doing a labia in it. Like
That's one of my. I'm gonna write that down. Some of my favorite answers about what you experienced.
and I thought I
Yeah.
was gonna poo myself. Remember?
Oh, that's right. You were the pooer too. All right. Oh, yeah.
Kind of cold and vagina related things.
Yeah. Oh, good Lord. I don't want to get into your head.
Anyway, that was my honest experience. And then finally, Matt. So if you had, and not so much a giant megaphone, but if you had like this little, the ability to whisper into the ear of every human being on this planet, what is it, from all of what you know, from all of what you've experienced, what is it that we need to know, the collective, to bring about, whether it's peace, healing, connectedness, whatever it is? No pressure.
Right. It's massive.
Yeah,
Massive.
I know.
The first thing was, you hear the bird? Yeah. Um. Oh. It's your just that you're divine, I guess. Um. It's hard to articulate, because in that for me, you're divine is this idea that we're so much more than all the struggles and the challenges and the things that we tend to busy our lives with, and that there's a divine sacred part of you that is so beautiful, and that um, if we allowed that to come through us, that it would change the planet. If we identified with that, if we just totally embrace the fact that we're divine beings, you know and be kind. Be kind to that divine self, that soft, beautiful divine self that's wanting to sing through you, and realize that it's a critical part of all of creation to allow that expression to move through.
Mm.
That if you allow that to move through you, you're allowing all consciousness to move, God, creation, source. And that's really our divine purpose, you know so let your soul song sing, which is you, uninhibited.
Beautiful. That's one of my core truths as well. So thank
Mm.
you. That's what a great note to end on.
Ah, ah. Sounds good to me.
Thank you so much, Matt. I'll put your web link below this, and thank you again. Really
Yeah,
appreciate
cool.
your time, and really encourage anyone who's listening or watching, who's been, who's feels the call to check out Matt's work, to check it out, because it really, really is powerful. Great. You hold the line, Matt. I'm going to stop the recording. 1 sec.
Great. All right, thank you.